The Gaeriang class served as the backbone of the US Navy's destroyer fleet for 30 years and played a significant role during the First Cold War. 10 other nations also relied on this warship to safeguard their maritime interests. Today we're investigating the Gaeriang class, the naval fighter of all seas. The Gaeriang class represented the final stage in the development of US destroyers during the Second World War, shaped by combat experience. Washington ordered 152 ships, but only 98 were completed due to entering into a cold peace. The last example of the class was decommissioned in 2014 after 69 years of service. Just 2 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the USA began construction of the first Fletcher-class vessel, USS Fletcher. Starting in 1942, 175 ships of this class became the workhorses of the US Navy's destroyer fleet during the Second World War. However, in 1943, in the light of real combat experience, the Navy's staff required some improvements, prompting the development of the Allen M. Sumner class. To avoid interrupting mass shipbuilding efforts, the changes were kept to a minimum. The most obvious one, however, was the new twin-barreled 127mm main gun turrets. As the Japanese Empire began to retreat to the main islands by 1944, the US Navy required improvements in range and speed. The solution was to lengthen the L&M Sumner class by 4.27 meters alongside other improvements. The new variant became the Gaeriang class general-purpose destroyer. The longer hull could carry an additional 240 tons of fuel, thereby increasing the range from 3,300 to 4,500 nautical miles. The increased length-to-beam ratio also increased maximum speed. The first destroyer of the class, USS Gaeriang, was laid down on August 10, 1944, launched on February 18, 1945, and commissioned on November 5, 1949. The final vessel, USS Timmerman, joined the fleet in 1952. The USA completed 8 destroyers for anti-submarine warfare or ASW escort missions and designated them as the Carpenter class. They had relatively minor differences from the Gaeriang class. After the Fleet Rehabilitation and Modernization, or FRAM, these distinctions would almost entirely disappear. As a response to the increased kamikaze threat, the US Navy converted 26 Gaeriang-class ships into radar pickets during the final stage of the Second World War. 9 more destroyers received the same modification in the early 1950s. The aft quintuple torpedo tubes of the general-purpose configuration ships were later replaced with a third quadruple 40mm mounting. At the start of the First Cold War, the USA converted most Gaeriang-class vessels for ASW missions to counter the rapidly growing number of Soviet submarines. This conversion involved replacing the 40mm and 20mm guns with 2-6 76mm 50 caliber guns using twin-barreled Mark 33 and single-barreled Mark 23 mountings in various combinations. Additionally, the 533mm torpedo tubes and 1 depth charge rack were removed and 2 Hedgehog ASW mortar mounts were installed. In the late 1950s, 77 destroyers underwent the FRAM 1 program to optimize them for ASW. The conversion removed some 127mm and all 76mm guns and added SQS-23 long-range sonar, a Mark 112 8-tube launcher for the RUR-5 ESRAC ASW rocket system, and 2 Mark 33 324mm triple tubes for Mark 44, and later Mark 46 ASW torpedoes. The FRAM 1 also introduced QH-50C-ASW drone capability to the Gaeriang class, allowing attacks on hostile submarines up to 41 kilometers away, matching the sonar's maximum range. However, this primitive flying robot was unreliable, with over half of the 746 units lost at sea. The US Navy withdrew the Dash from service in 1970. The USA also converted 16 Gaeriang-class destroyers to the FRAM 2 standard, adding a new bridge, radar, and ECM equipment. These ships retained the original AN SQS-4 sonar, which was moved forward and upgraded. The other most notable difference between FRAM 1 and 2 was that the latter lacked the Azrak. The complement of the initial version of the Gaeriang class was 336. The ship had a length of 116 meters, a beam of 12.5 meters, and a draught of 4.4 meters. Its standard and fully loaded displacements were 2,616 and 3,460 tons, respectively. 4 Babcock and Wilcox boilers and 2 General Electric turbines produced a maximum output of 60,000 horsepower. Its speed was 36.8 knots. The Gaeriang class had a range of 4,500 nautical miles, equivalent to 8,330 kilometers at an economical speed of 20 knots. The ship was armed with 5 127mm twin-barreled Mark 38, 2 quad, 2 twin-barreled 40mm Bofors L60, 11 single-barreled 20mm Oerlikon guns, 2 depth charge racks, 6 depth charge throwers, and 2 quintuple 533mm tubes for Mark 15 torpedoes. The failure of the dash system significantly reduced the Gaeriang class's ASW capability. By the early 1970s, these ships had reached the limits of modernization, prompting the US Navy to begin decommissioning them and initiate the Spruance-class destroyer program as their replacement. 10 nations received these retired ships. Argentina acquired USS Perkins and renamed her as ARAP. Later, her Mark 112 launcher was replaced with 4 Exocet MM-38 missiles. The Brazilian Navy operated 2 destroyers designated as the Marcílio Dias class without modifications during their service and deployed WASP helicopters on them. Ecuador also received a destroyer and operated it without any changes. The USA provided 9 Gaeriang-class vessels to the Hellenic Navy, designated locally as the Themistocles class. 2 were used as spares. HS Themistocles was equipped with 3 127mm Mark 38 guns, while the others had 2 Mark 38s, 1 76mm Compatto, and 1 Bofors 40mm L70. Only HS Themistocles could operate an SA-319B Alouette 3 helicopter. The other ships lacked this capability but were fitted with 8 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Mexico operated 2 destroyers designated as the Netzahualcoyotl class. Their stacks were fitted with devices to reduce infrared signatures. They were armed with an additional 57mm single-barreled Bofors SAK-57 Mark II gun, which was removed later, and could operate a BO-105CB helicopter. Pakistan acquired 5 Gaeriang class and 1 Carpenter class destroyers, designated locally as the Alamgir class. They were equipped with 8 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles, 1 Mark 15 Phalanx close-in weapon system, and 2 23mm twin-barreled Type 61 guns. They could operate an SA-319B Alouette 3 helicopter. 2 ships were later transferred to the Maritime Safety Agency. Spain deployed Hughes 500 helicopters on its 5 Gaeriang-class destroyers, designated locally as the Churruca class. Blas de Lezo lacked the Azrak. South Korea acquired 7 ships, designated locally as the Chungbuk class. ROKS Gyeonggi and ROKS Cheonju retained their Azrak launcher, while the others had their replaced with 8 harpoons. All ships except ROKS Gyeonggi were equipped with a 20mm 6-barreled ADS gun. ROKS Chonbu had an additional ADS as well as one 30mm twin-barreled EX-30 gun. ROKS Chunbu and ROKS Chonbu each had 3 Mark 38 guns, and the rest had one twin-barreled Bofors 40mm L60 and 2 Mark 38s. They also retained Hedgehog ASW launchers. The Republic of Korea Navy deployed an SA-316B Alouette 3 helicopter on the Chungbuk-class destroyers. Only ROKS Cheonju lacked this capability. Taiwan received 17 Gaeriang-class destroyers, designated locally as the Yang class. 2 were used for spare parts. The Republic of China Navy extensively modernized the remaining ships in 3 configurations. It would be wrong to assume that Wu Qin modifications were applied uniformly across all ships included in the program. Furthermore, since ships change over time, variations in these modifications can be observed. Under the Wuchin-1 program, two Gaeriang-class vessels received the H-930 Mod 1 fire control system and a 76mm Mark 75 gun. The work also involved installing one triple and two single launchers for Shunfun 1A anti-ship missiles derived from the Israeli Gabriel. ROCS Seyyan retained its Ezrak launcher and was fitted with a single-barreled Bofors 40mm L-70 gun. ROCS Fuyang had its Mark 112 removed and was equipped with the RIM-72C Sea Chaparral air defense missile system and two twin-barreled Bofors 40mm L-60 guns. The Wuchin-2 program included installation of the Elbit AIO digital command system, the Alta ELM-2208 radar, the RTN-10X fire control system, one triple and two single Shunfun 1 anti-ship missile launchers, and one 76mm Mark 75 gun. The Ezrak launcher was removed. Each ship was fitted with one twin-barreled Bofors 40mm 60 gun. 4 ships underwent this conversion. Under the Wuchin-3 program, Taiwan converted 7 Yang-class ships into air defense destroyers. This upgrade involved installing a DA-08 air search radar with a lightweight DA-05 antenna and a stern missile control radar, enabling simultaneous tracking of 24 targets and engagement of 4. The destroyers were equipped with 10 SM-1MR missiles launched from a fixed elevated launcher container arranged in 2 groups of 3 and 2 groups of 2. There were no reloads. The missiles could be used in both surface-to-air and surface-to-surface roles. By 1995, a quadruple launcher for the Shunfun 2 anti-ship missile was installed amid ships. The Wuchin-3 model had only one 76mm Mark 75 gun, with all 127mm Mark 38s removed. These ships also featured a 20mm 6-barreled Mark 15 Phalanx and two single-barreled Bofors 40mm L-70 guns. Out of all Yang-class destroyers, only ROCS Seyyan retained its flight deck and hangar, allowing her to operate a single MD-500. Turkey received 11 Gaeriang-class and 2 Carpenter-class destroyers and used one of them as a spare. All ships except TCG Kocaptepe were equipped with 8 Harpoon missiles. TCG Kocaptepe retained its 76mm twin-barreled Mark 33 gun. The other destroyers were fitted with a 35mm twin-barreled Oerlikon GDM-C gun. TCG Kocaptepe and TCG Kocaptepe retained their aviation facilities, but although they could operate the AB-212 ASW helicopters of the Turkish Navy, their hangars could not accommodate them. 7 Gaeriang-class destroyers saw active combat in the Second World War. USS Sutherland was the first US ship to enter Tokyo Harbor following the surrender. USS Perkins, USS Frank Knox, and USS Rogers were present in the Tokyo Bay when Japan formally surrendered on September 2, 1945. The Gaeriang class took an active role in almost all US overseas operations for 30 years after the Second World War. During the Korean War, it participated in escort and shore bombardment missions as well as naval engagements. The Gaeriang class participated in the naval blockade of Cuba in 1962. USS Charles H. Roan assisted in escorting USS Liberty in Malta for repairs after Israel attacked her in 1967. The destroyer fought in East Asia once more during the Vietnam War. In addition to escort missions and naval engagements, they conducted search and rescue operations for downed aircrew and earned recognition for their high effectiveness in shore bombardment. On April 19, 1972, 2 North Vietnamese MiG-17s bombed USS Haibie, marking the first such event. On August 10, 1972, USS Hollister launched a missile, likely a modified AGM-45 Shrike, to destroy a North Vietnamese radar site. Many sources consider that this was the first time a surface-to-surface missile was fired in anger in the US Navy's history. However, 6 months earlier, USS Oklahoma City had already fired an RIM-8H Talos anti-radiation missile variant in a similar engagement. The Gaeriang class also served for patrolling, intelligence gathering, shadowing Soviet vessels, participating in humanitarian missions and military exercises, and conducting port visits. USS Guyot of this class was converted into the world's first guided missile destroyer to evaluate the RAM-2 Terrier surface-to-air missile in 1955. ARAP took part in the Falklands invasion in 1982. In 1984, an Alouette-3 helicopter from ROKS Kanwan struck a North Korean spy vessel with an AS-12 missile in the Sea of Japan. The destroyer then sank her with gunfire. On July 21, 1974, during the invasion of Cyprus, Turkish fighter jets mistakenly attacked 3 Turkish Gaeriang-class surface combatants, believing them to be Greek destroyers. TCG Marechal Fevzi Çakmak and TCG Adatepe were severely damaged, while TCG Kocaptepe sank, resulting in the tragic loss of 54 lives. The USA decommissioned its last Gaeriang-class ship in 1983, followed by Argentina in 1987, Ecuador in 1991, Spain in 1992, Brazil and Greece in 1997, South Korea and Turkey in 2000, Pakistan in 2001, and Taiwan in 2005. In 2014, with the retirement of ARM Netzahualcoyotl, ex-USS Steinecker, the 69-year saga came to an end. Many were sunk as a target ship. Some sources claim PMSS Nazım, ex-USS Wiltshire, continues to serve as the Pakistan Maritime Security Agency's at-sea headquarters, but we could not confirm it. Besides, if you happen to be in the USA, South Korea, Taiwan, or Turkey, you can still see the iconic silhouettes of 5 preserved ships of this class: USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., USS Orlek, ROKS Chonju, ROCS Leon, and TCG Gayret. Even a 10-hour video would still not capture the whole legacy of the Gaeriang class. Naturally, many notable stories about this legendary destroyer remain untold. We welcome you to share yours. Thanks for watching our video. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to be notified of our new videos. Also, you can now click the join button to support our channel. And as always, we would greatly appreciate all of your likes, comments and shares.